Good morning. Someone asked me to discuss something, so I thought I'd give my point of view. I usually do what she says. Coercion versus persuasion. It seems like something very obvious, just, from the surface. It is better to persuade someone, to convince them that your point of view, what you want to do, anything in life, it's better to persuade. Show them, this is, the sky's blue. Look, here's a spectrometer. It'll show you that the sky is blue. Also, if you just look up, you can see the sky is blue. Nuances, many different nuances. Bright blue, dark blue, morning blue, evening blue. Persuasion. The idea that you could convey your thoughts and your ideas to someone else is essential in a society that believes in free speech. Persuasion. Coercion. That's pretty straightforward as well. Do what I want you to do or face the consequences. Believe what I want you to believe or face the consequences. Coercion can mean anything. The consequences of coercion can mean anything from crying to a fit to a threat of violence to violence. Coercion. The government functions on coercion. That's how they get things done. If you don't follow their laws and now rules, you will face the consequences. And the consequences is always violence. Violence can include anything from they'll put you in jail, they'll shoot you, they'll take your property. That's how the government gets things done. They don't say, please pay your taxes. They say, pay your taxes or else. They don't say, please do the speed limit. They say, do the speed limit or else. I think there are times where the repercussions of an action has to be enforced through coercion, through the threat of violence. Drive the speed limit or else. Well, there's a school zone, and if you go through the school zone, which is 25, and you're doing 90, you're putting other people's lives at risk. Coercion. If you do that, we're giving you a ticket. You're going to pay the ticket. If you don't pay the ticket, we're going to come and get you and put you in jail. Coercion. I'm not saying it's always a bad thing. I'm saying it's usually a bad thing. Which brings us to the politics of coercion. And a group gets together and they try to convince the people of a country, in this case our country, that their way of thinking is correct. They can't get it done. They can't convince everybody to do things how they want them to do, how they want the country to be run. The next step, and this is where the nuance is, and what a lot of people don't see, is the persuasiveness of majority, and when the majority becomes coercion. I routinely mispronounce words, as in routine. Also, coercion. Coercion of the majority is just as bad as tyranny of the majority. So, that group that tried to convince the country to run things their way convinces the majority of voters to run things their way. And now the government is running things how that majority wants it to be run, through coercion. So that group of people persuaded enough people to coerce the rest of the people into submission. Not as straightforward as it seems. The majority can coerce the minority. And then it gets even more complicated, because now there's a whole block of people who don't vote. So now it's not even the majority of the country that has the government coercing the people who don't want to do what they want them to do. Now you have a minority, which is a majority of voters, telling the government to coerce the rest of the people. That's hard to accept, but that's oftentimes where we end up in America, because the majority of people don't vote, unfortunately. Not normally. I think according to this last election, this last presidential election, if I'm not mistaken, we were getting close to a majority if we didn't actually breach that line. So the government coerces. That's what they do. They force at the threat of violence to get things done. I always thought that the workaround for that was we were in a republic. And in a republic, we have representatives. In our republic, it's a representative republic. We vote for people to represent us. Right now, there's a lot of people who aren't happy with representation in the White House. So far, meh. However, the governor of the government, that thing which limits government, is supposed to be the Constitution. That's the brakes, B-R-A-K-E-S, brakes, that stops the government from overwhelming and coercing the people into doing what they want them to do. It's supposed to be. The checks and balances are there to ensure that the Constitution is upheld. It hasn't been. It's a piece of paper. It's worked for a long time. We never know where we're headed as a country. There's way too many secrets at the top. I'm excited to see that a lot of these secrets are going to be supposed to be by executive order. He's the one with the power to do it, shown to the public. Hopefully that'll happen. The coercion, if put in the spotlight, hopefully that will stop it. At least slow it down. Tamper it down to something that we can live with. Persuade. So you can persuade a group of people to force a minority of people, or in our case, a majority of the people, into doing what they want or what they don't want. Force. And this comes back to why I'm a libertarian. I am not an anarchist in today's definition of the term. I understand that there's a place for government. I understand that there's things that government needs to do. Protect the people, protect the borders, protect... That's about as far as I'm willing to go. A lot of people will go another step and say, protect the interests of our country. Well, the interests of our country could be taking the wealth of another country or coercing them into doing something they don't want to do. I'm not down with that. That always leads to war. Persuasion. That's where it's at. Persuade people to do the things that you believe are right. And when I say persuade, what I'm saying is enlighten them to the truth. Enlighten them to your point of view. You can persuade somebody through manipulation to do what you want them to do without them knowing they're doing what they don't want to do. If you don't believe me, think about the last car you bought, or the first car you bought off of a car lot. You were persuaded through manipulation to do something you probably wouldn't want to do if you were thinking straight. There's a book out there. I can't remember the name of it, but it lays out the formula to get people to do what you want them to do. That's not persuasion. That's manipulation. Persuasion. Enlighten people to your point of view. And in doing so, you may find out that your point of view is changing. There have been many times when I have sat down, especially with my wife, and I have talked, and she'll let me ramble on, rambling with Joe, and until she sees something that is like, hey, what about this little, she'll pick that thread. What about this little thing right here that you just said? And eventually, I have to change my line of thinking on a particular subject. The death penalty. I was persuaded away from the death penalty for two major factors. Number one, at the time, I was a practicing Catholic, and the death penalty, life. Give unto God what is God, and give unto Caesar what is Caesar. Well, Caesar can't make life. There's only one entity that could make life, and that's God. So on a religious level, at the time, I had to give it up. Later in life, I realized, holy crap, we are such imperfect beings that the ultimate threat of violence, taking one's life, we shouldn't have that. That's not something that we should have the power over. We're not perfect in that aspect. People are put to death that didn't do anything wrong. Many people. So that changed my mind on that front. I was persuaded. No one held a gun to my head and said, the death penalty is wrong. Which would have been ironic. Anyway, I was persuaded. Persuasion over coercion. oftentimes during these ramblings, everything's off the cuff here. I don't have a script. There's not a whiteboard, or thought about the whiteboard thing, because I oftentimes go down rabbit holes that have nothing to do with the topic. But oftentimes when I'm sitting here and rambling, I'll catch myself saying something and be like, is that right? And I'll have to check. Is that right? I've edited very little of these videos. Mostly they're from beginning to end. You get to see. I'll cut off the very first few seconds where I'm starting the video. I've thought about cutting off some problems when I had to adjust the cameras. Cameras? Like I've got multiple cameras. I'm using my phone where I had to adjust the camera. But mostly, you're seeing this raw. And many times, if you'll just open your mind, you can persuade yourself to a different line of thinking. I have. I can't think of one that I've done while I'm on this podcast, for lack of a better term. But I have many times. I've also watched someone recognize that what they're saying is incorrect and move right on ahead because they don't want to be wrong, or they don't want to admit they're wrong. You can see it in someone's faces, you know? Well, yeah, but if you just look up, you'll see the sky is red. I'm telling you, it's red. You know, you can see it when it happens. And I've caught myself in that position as well. Wait a minute, am I arguing just to be arguing now? Just to win? Or do I really believe this? You have to open yourself to being persuaded and looking at the facts and deciding if these facts are true. But in doing so, you also have to be very careful of manipulation. I can fall to manipulation a lot easier than I like to admit. I've been persuaded of that fact, and it's true. That's my basic tenets on persuasion versus coercion. It's okay to coerce someone into not committing murder. It's not okay to persuade someone to commit murder. There's a line there. It's okay to persuade someone that this law is just and constitutional. It's not okay to coerce someone into following a law which is neither constitutional or proper or good for the majority of people. And we have a lot of laws like that. I have a friend on Facebook who's infuriated, and it shows in his posts constantly, infuriated at President Trump. Calls him names and just, but won't address two things. He won't address any specific thing and justify his hate for the man, and won't address any single thing that he's done right. I don't agree with everything President Trump has done. I think some of the things he's done are going to be overturned in the court. I hope, anyway, some of the things he's done will be overturned in the court. Some of the things he's done, I'm very excited about. Some of the declassifications, some of the things that he's doing to do away with non-essential parts of the government. That's very exciting. I hope those hold up. I don't see why they wouldn't. It's his job to execute those things. Executive. Is he coercing or is he persuading? Well, I think he's kind of doing what he was elected to do, and still has a very high rating with the people. Coercion over persuasion. Sometimes I have to ask myself, am I manipulating, which I consider coercion, or am I persuading? Look, this would be done better if you do it like this, or do it like this, that's better. It comes down to that. It really does. It's not okay to persuade someone to murder. It is okay to coerce someone to not murder. Oftentimes not black and white. Oftentimes there's a gray in there, but that's what I got this morning. I also got to go to work. Hoping the wife comes down and spends a little time with me today. One day we'll both be back to drinking coffee. How do you drink your coffee? Do you like your coffee black? Or with just a little sweetener? Or with a little cream and sweetener? Or just with some cream? Or go to hell, Joe, that's none of your business? It certainly isn't. I'm just curious. I love a little bit of cream and a little bit of sweetener. And I love a little bit of, when I say cream, I mean half and half, which is half heavy cream and half milk. But the bulletproof coffee I have about 2-3 times a week. That's probably my favorite, but it has a digestive impact. So anyway, let me know what you like. I'm real curious how many people drink straight black coffee, because I've never been able to stomach it. But at this point in my life, I'm certainly not going to be without coffee. And I hope that you have a good cup of coffee today. Nah, I hope you have a fantastic cup of coffee and a great day. And I'll see you next time.